I lead the people and culture team at BlueRock. I joined in May of 2020, so was a COVID hire, and I'm fully aware of how challenging that can be and how unique an opportunity that is. And we've been really working to build our people and culture infrastructure and programming and partnership with the business for the last couple of years. We're a cell and gene platform company, and so we're working to treat the underlying cause of disease. Our platform allows us to create cells that can replace lost or damaged cells due to disease. And so we're working across a number of different therapeutic areas, but our lead program is in the Parkinson's disease space, and we've actually entered the clinic in early 2021 for our first phase 1 trial, which is really exciting. We've worked really hard to attract new employees over the last couple of years. And again, I think having been a COVID hire myself positioned me really well to understand what really matters, especially for those who are joining as a fully virtual employee, at least maybe for the front end of their experience with BlueRock. And I think to that end, we've really relied on the strength of our culture. I was very curious myself coming into this role as to whether I would be able to really pick up on the culture in a fully virtual setting. And I can share, very solidly that we have a really strong culture in place, and it comes through regardless of where you are. And we're growing across some of the most exciting cities in the world. So we have labs in New York and in Toronto and in Boston, and our headquarters is in Cambridge. And each location brings really unique challenges from a talent attraction standpoint. So Cambridge and Boston is your kind of classic biotech war for talent. We have to be really competitive. We have to make sure our talent brand is top notch and really attractive, and that we're really selling, who we are and the way that we work together, for sure in Cambridge and Boston. New York and Toronto are a unique and different challenge. It's less of a biotech foothold in both of those cities. So there's a little bit less competition, but we also really have to ensure that we're striving to attract the best of the best talent in both of those locations. And we also need to build talent from within, particularly in those geographies, because there is a more limited pool. The common themes are that, we've done a lot of work from a compensation perspective to try to keep pace with this market, which, we all know is moving at lightning speed, and ultimately rely on our science and our culture to keep people at BlueRock. So we've done a lot of culture building work. So when I had first joined BlueRock, I would share that we were fairly under-articulated in terms of our culture, so you could feel it. You knew kind of what it felt like to be in the culture, but we didn't, by way of example, have values that we had formally published or behaviors that were common that we held ourselves and each other accountable to. So some of the front end, the first year or so of work here at BlueRock was building our values, publishing them, and then really building a common understanding about what those values are, especially because we are distributed over multiple geographies that have their own microculture, right, based on the city that they're in and those dynamics at play. So we formalized our values in early 2021, and that's been really helpful in grounding us. But I would also share, I think, because of the rate of growth that we're going through, part of the retention mechanism that keeps employees at BlueRock is the experience and the learning that they get in their roles day to day. So we are certainly developing our core L&D offerings, but with a company that's was 140 or so employees when I started in 2020, we're at about 270 now. We're going to about 400 at the end of this year. All of that growth brings tremendous experiential learning opportunities. And we're really focused on partnering with managers to ensure that as those opportunities arise, as we grow, as we get more complicated and complex, that we are ensuring that our employees have the opportunity to stretch and to do new and different things in their roles. Yeah, it's such a great question. And for us, DE&I is a focus Certainly, and it's also a journey. And I'm a big believer that you have to be incredibly targeted in your DE&I approach to ensure you're moving the needle, right? There's a tremendous amount of work to be done at BlueRock and at every biotech to ensure that we are keeping DE&I at the center. But I think it's how you chip away at that that matters. And so at BlueRock, we started with the foundation. I'm a really big believer that we have to have the culture and the organizational understanding internally on how to support diverse talent in order to be successful from a DE&I recruiting perspective and to help us get ultimately to the numbers that we would like to see internally. I think it can be a really big mistake to be really flashy and out there with a talent brand that sells DE&I as something you care about. Ultimately, if you hire diverse talent, they need to come in the door and be a part of an environment that is one that they can thrive in and that supports their growth over time. So we kind of started at the beginning, which is provide foundational training and education to employees internally first on DE&I 101. What's the vocabulary that we're going to use? What's the lexicon? How do we make sure that we are all speaking the same language? We have training on creating cultures of inclusion. We have training on recruiting best practices in the DE&I space. And so we really took that internal focus to kind of do the work internally before we were aggressive about things like targets that we wanted to hit. So that has been a really helpful mechanism for us and has organically led to better diversity hiring. And we've also taken a very specific approach with women in leadership. There was a really easy gap to see here, and we wanted to make sure we were starting to close that gap. And we've had a great degree of success in ensuring that we're bringing in women leaders, particularly at the executive level, but in all levels of leadership. Great question. We have gone through quite a bit of leadership change, particularly at the executive level. And I think ultimately, we're not very different than many other biotechs, which are constantly evolving. So that evolution, both in sort of the maturity of a pipeline and where you're headed as an organization, often requires or drives change in leadership. And I'm a big believer that biotech employees understand this, especially if it's not their first rodeo. Employees are pretty resilient to change as long as you're helping them through that journey. So we really do focus on effective change management. It's been key for us. And there are a lot of different elements of change management that you can kind of pull the lever on. For us, it's started with sharing what is changing and what's not. Just because we have leadership change in specific areas doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing the direction, that we're changing our mission, and certainly we're not changing our values and who we are and how we operate. So what's changing and what's not? From there, we really focus on fostering understanding and helping employees understand why things are changing. I think that's a huge element of gaining their buy-in and helping to allay some of the concerns that can naturally pop up when you do have leadership change. And of course, as we grow, different behaviors are needed for us to be successful. And so we also really focus on identifying what the new behaviors might be and role modeling those behaviors at the top. And so right now, we're very much focused on empowerment and accountability and psychological safety to help us drive success in our programs.